Hello, welcome to another episode of Context. I'm Dilek Tuna. Today on the program, we take stock of a relationship once described as managed rivalry, now looking increasingly mismanaged. Just weeks ago, Chinese officials believed they were entering a period of calm with the United States, a so-called strategic truce. Rhetoric had cooled. Channels of communication were open, and while competition remained, confrontation seemed contained. But then two sudden moves by the Trump campaign reignited old tensions. First, sweeping new tariffs on Chinese goods, a flashback to the bruising trade war of his first term. Second, direct engagement with Taiwan, with language that Beijing views as a red line. So how did China read the room so wrong? And what do these shocks tell us about Washington's shifting posture toward Beijing and about Trump's own playbook as the US election looms? Joining me on the program to discuss are Andrew Leung, he's an international and independent China strategist from Hong Kong, and Klaus Yugen, political analyst at Economy First Limited from London, UK. A warm welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So I've got three questions that I'll ask you both. Let's begin with Andrew. Andrew, Beijing seemed genuinely surprised by Trump's recent actions. Why do you think China read the situation so differently?
I don't think China was totally surprised. Let's walk to a little bit to the middle of April, when President Trump really upped the ante and then pushed the tariffs to unprecedented levels of 245%, to which China responded with a reciprocal tariff, with a responsive tariff of 125%, but adding that China would not respond any further, because any higher numbers do not mean anything. It's just a measure of arithmetic, because no trade can be done. But on the other hand, Beijing is well prepared for this since Trump 1.0, because don't forget that when Trump first went into the White House, that's before Biden, Beijing already knew that something is coming big sooner or later. And President Xi instructed the entire nation to shift its emphasis to technological self-reliance and also concentrating on internal services instead of entirely on export, and also pivoting to the global south. So all these are bearing fruit. On technology, let's look at DeepSeek and China's own built space station. As for trade with the global south, is progressing by leaps and bounds. And in fact, the entire world is now recalibrating its relationship with Washington, even because the allies, they are likely to target it. And President Trump is replacing the American-led world liberal order with rules of the jungle, targeting, as I said, not only its rivals, China, Russia, but also its allies. And so you can see that even Europe is recalibrating its relationship, not embracing China entirely, but also looking at to what extent that they can safeguard their own national sovereignty and their own national interests. The more so, the rest of the world. You look at the Middle East, and look at Southeast Asia, you look at Latin America. So I don't think that China was totally surprised. But I think that Trump is, he recently during an interview, he admitted that all these tariffs, in answer to press queries, and he was saying that, well, of course, this is at the art of the deal. I want to hype this tariffs to as high as possible, then I walk back. But at the end of the day, he wants to get a good deal for the United States. But I don't think that Beijing would be totally surprised by these tactics.
Okay. All right, Yugen, are these shocks part of a long-term strategic recalibration or simply campaign year theatrics from Trump?
Well, it's a good question, and thanks for having me, and thanks for my esteemed colleague from Hong Kong. Love that place, been there many times. Thank you. Now, I would want to start by saying the following. I mentioned this before. Running for office might be costly, but reasonably easy. Winning an election might still be easy. Having your first 100 days in office, fair enough. And then the government business kicks in. And I think that Donald Trump, President Trump, is still engaged in a kind of verbal warmongering to portray himself as the strongman. And let's be honest, he won his election basically on the Make America Great Again promise, not only because he was perceived as a strongman, but public opinion polls before the vote, when he was re-entering the Oval Office, basically said America has lost its purpose, its national identity, and probably the population wanted a president who gives them that back. Now, my colleague here from Hong Kong said something absolutely fascinating, if I may say so. Yes, could a strongman in the White House, who for the time being overplays his parts before he returns to realpolitik, which every politician sooner or later has to, could this lead to a stronger Europe? Could this lead to a stronger China? Could this lead to emerging markets? Think about other BRICS nations, not even mentioning Turkey and your fine nation. Could this perhaps lead to a recalibration of national interests in saying dependency on Washington might have been helpful, perhaps it is still helpful, but we must find our own ways? How can this be achieved? By innovating your industry, by restructuring your companies, and of course by investing. I think we come back to the semiconductor question in a minute.
Okay. Andrew, I want to ask you the same question. Are these shocks part of a long-term strategic recalibration or simply campaign-year theatrics from Trump? What would you like to say in regards to that? Andrew, we appear to have some technical issues again. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so it appears we're still trying to reconnect with Andrew. So in the meantime, Jürgen, you can still hear me okay, right?
Yes, very well, thank you.
All right, well, let's perhaps continue with you. What do these moves signal about the direction of US-China relations?
Well, I want to come to these 2 points we discussed before the program. Now let's start with the family issue and the student visas. It does not make headlines, perhaps, because what is a student visa compared to high-tech giants? But I see it completely different, because I truly believe in civil society dialogue, as you may know. So, threatening to revoke a number of student visas, actually a large number of student visas, if some of the visa holders would not automatically distance themselves from being in any way linked to the Chinese Communist Party. When I heard about this first, I almost started to smile and said, oh my goodness, I thought I have heard it all in my life, but I haven't. Now, you must understand that someone who comes to America doesn't come to America to change America, but to benefit from its education system, stay for some years, and then perhaps even stay forever and become a vital part of the American academic world and economy, or go home. And what he or she learned in the United States will greatly benefit that country. Look, I'm a migrant myself, basically. I left my own home country and studied in another country, but eventually went back. This is a normal process. So this, I think, is absolutely hilarious and wrong. And China should perhaps not retaliate, but at least make sure that in bilateral relations, this topic of the visa dimension for students is literally put off the table. Can you imagine how expensive it is for Chinese middle-class families to actually embark with their children on this journey of a lifetime? And America should be the melting pot of the world and not putting up the mental drawbridges. That was my first point. Secondly, semiconductors. We are using them probably right now as we speak. I look into not into, of course, but speaking, but onto my mobile phone, just remembering semiconductors are almost everywhere. And you need software to do it. You can have real software or you can have artificial intelligence software. This is a point up to 10-20%. I would understand Donald Trump by saying, look, if we export all our technology, all other countries, including China around the world, will get better than us, eventually leading to a loss of jobs. Now, this is what I mean with realpolitik. He has to figure out, do tariffs make sense? Do sanctions on certain exports make sense? What would happen if other countries, when they are simply better in innovating their own industries, and then they would do the same? This would be a global trade war, and we had one. It has to be averted. So I can't stress it enough. Realpolitik, please. Yes, that should be the order of the day. But please don't forget the students. Can you imagine how expensive it is to fork out not only the student visa, that is the cheapest part, but actually the living costs for your children coming to America, hoping that this, even if Trump says, make America great again, let every foreign student be a part of it, and this is your best goodwill ambassador. Honestly, with all my modesty, I don't understand President Trump in this regard, or his advisors.
Okay, yeah, I don't think many people do, Klaus. Now, it appears we have Andrew back with us. Andrew, you can hear me okay now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Now, from your vantage point, how much of a setback are these moves for China's current foreign policy strategy?
Well, I think that, as I said before, President Xi and the whole Chinese nation was well prepared for this since Trump 1.0. But I was just about to say that not many people realize what the Trump administration with his expert teams is trying to get. How is he going to make America great again? But let's walk back a little and you can understand all the jigsaw pieces are falling together. When he went to the White House, the first thing he said, he wanted Canada, Panama Canal, and of course he wanted South America. Just look at the world map. All these territories are in the Western sphere. To have a Western Hemisphere, America, United States. Not necessarily, planting things on Canada, but controlling them, controlling the resources, because land is very rich in us, which is the Achilles heel foreign policy, and Canada is very rich in resources as well, and controlling the Panama Canal. The United States, Washington controls South America. So the whole Western Hemisphere. Now, as for Asia Pacific, he's going to do it offshore, through the U.S. dollar, through tariffs, and through American allies. So that's how he wants to make America great again. It's imposing huge levies on shipping, for example. Nearly $2 million per port call for any China-made ships. Now, look at the term China-made ships. Even though those ships are not owned by Chinese companies, any companies owning these China-made ships would have to pay these huge tariffs on American ports. Now, American ports could also be defined American invested ports, and hence the Hutchison deal. If this Hutchison ports, which of course include a lot of ports in Europe and also in Asia, in Arab, in Africa, if they're sold to American interests, they could also be subject to this huge shipping tariffs, with the hope of starving China's shipping industry of financial oxygen, ostensibly wanting to bring shipping back again to the United States and jobs back again to the United States. But that's a pipe dream. unfortunately, and then in the process, using his wrecking ball, destroying the American-led liberal order, destroying the values which the United States and its close allies have held dearly for so long, is now actually trashing Americans' leadership and opening up a lot of space for countries like in Europe, in Saudi Arabia, in Latin America, to recalibrate, as I said, their relationship with China, which although they're not embracing China entirely, but at least relatively speaking, China seems to be a little bit more consistent and a little bit more inclined to support the existing world order, benefiting most people.
Okay. Klaus, Trump's proposed tariffs could shock global markets as well. What are the implications for Europe and for a fragile global economy still recovering post-COVID?
Absolutely. I followed the German construction sector very closely recently, and a spokesperson said, look, Trump's tariffs basically don't really impact us because the construction sector in Germany, and mostly middle class families and small and medium-sized enterprises, except for some of the really big players, they have their logistics put firmly in place domestically. So they would not be concerned at all. But then that spokesperson said something absolutely fascinating. He said, yes, but this is our sector. Now can you imagine if other industry sectors are hit by Donald Trump's tariffs? No one would be interested in investing into building a new house, a new school, and governments would refrain from investing into the construction sector if that is basically only one part of the entire Trump tariff deal. So yes, there will be huge implications, of course, and a truce here and a truce there. I still hope that there will be a negotiated settlement between Brussels and Washington. It is in the interest of and for both sides, because let us not forget, tariffs eventually make goods for the ordinary consumer more expensive. Secondly, what I want to say, coming back to China, if I may, dear colleague, as well. Now, I can imagine that with all the hesitation in Brussels towards Donald Trump and his presidency 2.0 anyhow, even before the elections, Kamala Harris was the candidate of choice in the establishment, in the legacy media, what have you. And they still haven't come to terms with it, that he is actually in the Oval Office, that he is back. Now, why not allow China to play a much more active role in this recalibration process indeed? Yes, Europe will not overnight embrace whatever Beijing is saying or doing, but there could be a new geopolitical dimension, new relations, and perhaps actually Europe and China could work together more closely. Last point, China, of course, is very active on and in the African continent, and has changed its approach towards bilateral relations, and in particular via investment. Why not let business go first, and then, as I've mentioned, let the people come second? So I think there's huge potential for China recalibrating its approach. Use diplomacy, talk to the Europeans, let Donald Trump continue on his Make America Great Again, but allow the Europeans, perhaps, as Mrs. Meloni, the president, Italy said, look, perhaps we can make Italy great again. We can make Europe great again. Why not have a new geopolitical order? Last point, really, really promised. No one expected ever a pandemic to happen. This has changed the whole way we view our world. So why don't we think out of the box? Closer relations between Europe and China, not putting up the drawbridges vis-à-vis Donald Trump. Let him get on with what he thinks, but via lobbying and diplomacy, making sure that a new trade war is definitely not in the interest of any player, and definitely not in the interest of the United States of America, too.
Okay, and Andrew, do you think that China will retaliate anytime soon, or does Beijing prefer to wait?
No, I think that if the Trump administration would up the ante, China already said many times it's going to defend its own sovereignty and development interests very strongly. China has already prepared for the worst. But I don't think that China likes retaliation. As I said before, right at the beginning, China, beyond a certain point, China said that it's not going to respond any further, and is waiting for the Americans to show goodwill. Now, as far as the relationships are concerned, I mean, this trade frictions is not just about deficits. It's about jobs. It's about manufacturing capacity. In fact, there are some real issues between China and the United States and China and Europe, because China's, for example, the electric vehicles are so competitive. I mean, even with tariffs, and because they are high quality, they're high technology, full of the latest technological innovation, and extremely good value for money. There's no way that other Western manufacturers can compete. But at the end of the day, that's not very good for China either, because the last thing that China should do is to hollow out their manufacturing capacity in the United States and in Europe. And for example, Germany, if Germany is losing its entire vehicle industry, or the United Kingdom for that matter. Now, when I visited London last year, I experienced a moment of epiphany, in the sense that when I saw all these London black cabs, and now they're of course clean energy black cabs, but half of them are produced by a firm called LEV. LEV stands for London Electric Vehicles with a small c. C stands for Coventry. So these cars owned by China, the company, or Geely, owns this manufacturing operation in Coventry, but they are being manufactured in the United Kingdom, producing jobs, contributing to the local economy. I think that this kind of model can be replicated to other European countries like Germany and quite possibly the United States, with the help of something like Elon Musk, because Trump already said that he welcomes China's investment. But what he wants to do is really wants to bring some jobs back. And this kind of model of outsourcing, or not outsourcing, but relocating some of the manufacturing processes to China's trading partners, including the United States, could well serve to rebalance the relationship.
Okay. And Klaus, is the West unified in its stance toward China, or are there cracks between Washington and its allies on how to handle Beijing, considering they are so powerful?
Well, I think there are cracks, and there are cracks emerging how Europe is trying to handle Russia as well. Never forget the former German Chancellor, Gerhard Schröder, who very famously said there will simply be no world without Russia. So simply I added, and the rest is a literal quote. Now, he made one point clear, that Europe is important, is big, but cannot run and rule the world alone, and should never attempt. And this was the point about Russia. Now, I think Europeans still have to discover or rediscover China and its huge potential for bilateral relations, and not only trade, but this new geopolitical order. And I can imagine that, coming back to my previous point, that some of the established political parties, and definitely what we by now all call the, thanks to Mr. Musk, the legacy media, but it's still there too, and it is absolutely vital and absolutely important. It is about making and shaping public opinion. If there would be a charm offensive from the side of Beijing to say, look, we understand you have certain problems with Washington, we have certain problems with Washington, what can our both sides as partners actually achieve and do something positive for the economy, creating jobs? The example from Coventry, absolutely perfect. Now, this could be done in Germany, this could be done in Italy, this could be done anywhere. And don't forget, if then China would open the doors for investment, no tariffs, exchange of human technology, intellectual capacity, and China could benefit, Europe could benefit. So this was my first point I made. Make America great again. Yes, of course, we are all going to watch and see, but we shouldn't sit idle. China shouldn't sit idle. Europe shouldn't sit idle. We should actually roll up our sleeves and say, how do we react? What do we do? And what can we do ourselves? So I'm not at all completely pessimistic, but we have to be careful what comes out of Washington. Yes, indeed.
Okay. All right, Andrew, my last question is to you. How are domestic Chinese media and analysts framing Trump's recent actions as provocation, political theatre, or both?
I think the China social media is a mixture of derision, laughter, anger, and I think that there is a much greater understanding now what Trump, all these antics are all about. And I think that there is a great rallying of the Chinese people behind what the leadership is trying to do, because they are seeing that they're setting an example to the rest of the world, that countries like China should not be under the thumb, be covering under any kind of bullying. So I think that there's a great rallying of the Chinese people, but I think that I'd like to come back to what China's role is in vis-a-vis Europe. Of course, that we've seen the Belt and Road Initiative with all its problems, but with all its advantages. But I think that this Trump tariffs war and wrecking ball of the liberal world order, as just we've discussed, opens up an opportunity for China to play a role to maybe bringing the European countries together. Because all countries are now more closely linked with the fourth and fifth industrial revolution, and of course through China's Belt and Road Initiative, with infrastructure, with high-speed rail, with direct freight trains linking Europe to China, in a way that this would help cement the solidarity of European nations together, plus China's investments. And as I explained just now, perhaps China's relocating some of its manufacturing processes to Europe, helping to with the local economy and opening up its own internal economy, welcoming more investments. And I think that that's also catalyst with the Beijing's initiative, particularly in the next 5-year plan. And I think you're going to see more open up of China's economy. In fact, that in recent months, Beijing already opened up a number of sectors, including wealth management, including some consumer sectors. I think there's a great opportunity for both sides, for China, Europe, and the rest of the world. Currently, the American-led liberal order is now lying in tatters.
Okay, Andrew, thank you so much. Klaus, a big thank you to you as well. Thank you for joining the program, making time for us today.
Thank you.
Now, the US-China relationship has long been defined by cycles, competition, confrontation, and cautious reset. But in a global climate as volatile as this one, with elections looming, economies in flux, and new alliances emerging, shocks carry more weight than ever. For China, the assumption of stability may have been premature. For Trump, disruption may once again be the strategy. That's Context. I'm Dilek Tuna. Thank you for watching.